Welcome back to the Foundry. It's been a minute since I've had a chance to upload a video, but if you remember where we left off, I've got a Honda Foreman with 16,000 miles on it and a locked up engine. And I'm trying to get it back in service for an upcoming hunting trip. Now, we were waiting on some parts to come in. They finally got here. And let's see what we got here. We got the bearings and seals we were after. We got brake shoes. We got a master cylinder, new clutch sprag, and of course the gasket. These two items are genuine Honda. This is just whatever I could get my hands on. So let's see if we can make some progress. I've got the gasket surface prepared. I used a razor blade scraper and a little emery cloth, and it's as clean as I'm gonna get it. I still have to clean the cover, but before I do, I wanted to show you. This right here is 20 years of sediment. And that is really not bad considering. That's really not bad at all. And that really goes to show you that I've never drowned this thing out. It's never had muddy water in the crankcase, because when that happens, and the reason why it requires in most cases you to split the cases, pull the transmission out, and really scrub out the crankcase, is because that sediment turns in, it gets all digested in the engine, settles in the bottom, and it forms a, it's basically like a lapping compound. And it's kind of a sludgy, crusty material that you cannot just wash out with diesel. A lot of people will just fill the crankcase with diesel, run it for a few minutes, change the oil. And in mild cases that might work, but in a severe case, that diesel won't even cut that crap out for you to drain it out the drain plug. And what happens is once the engine gets up to operating temperature, the crud begins to mingle up into the oil, and it is just lapping compound for your piston, your rings. Next thing you know, it's smoking and you're hearing noises, and that's why you have to split the cases. All right, I'm going to start by preparing the clutch surfaces. This is the inside that the sprag rides on. I usually just like to give it a little clean up with the emery cloth to remove any burrs or minimize any grooves. And I'll do the same on the outside. And then we'll do the same out here where the shoes ride. Then I clean it up in the parts washer, and before we go back together with it, your sprag is always labeled here on the outside. It'll say this side out or outside. Make sure you get that right or it'll sprag in the wrong direction. And then of course, I'm just taking oil it up, drop it in, there we go, new sprag. Except I grabbed the wrong one, so I had to grab the right one and drop it in there. Now we've got a new sprag. All right, let's see if I can slide this back on here with one hand while I hold a camera. The drum's got to go on those splines. The center hub's got to go on the center splines. And when you put the, let's see here. Here's our washer. It can go on either way. It's not marked. Now when you go to reinstall the clutch nut, it doesn't use a lock washer. It's got this little shoulder or ring around the front of that nut. And you simply tighten it up like you normally would, then take a little punch and you dent that ring into a corresponding slot on the crankshaft, and that's what locks it in place. All right, I got the clutch linkage reinstalled and we're ready to go back on with the case cover. And this is also a good time to replace the oil pump O-ring. Mine was looking pretty rough. I'm just crisscrossing a few of these. Before I go any further, I think it would be a good idea to check the clutch linkage and make sure nothing fell off when I was putting the case on. Darkness is upon us, gentlemen, so my skylights aren't going to be doing as good as they normally would be. I'm going to have to spin these wheels a little bit. There we go. It does feel like shift linkage is doing what it's supposed to. Now's a good time to replace the cooler line O-rings as well. Mine were leaking a little bit, so they were definitely due. All right, now the last thing here is the oil filter. These are not ambidextrous, so don't put them in upside down. Make sure your spring is in there, and I've got new O-rings installed. Now I think I forgot to mention when I was putting this case cover on there, I had the gasket on the cover itself as opposed to up on the engine. Typically I like to hang the gasket up on the engine on the dowels. That way it's not trying to fall off when you're wrestling the cover up in there. But in this case, one of the dowels came out in the cover and one stayed in the engine. So I tried to take the dowel out of the cover to put back in the engine, and it wouldn't come out. I was gonna have to mangle it to get it out, and I didn't have a replacement, so instead I took the one out of the engine and put it in the cover, and that's why I did that. So there's really, there's always more than one way to skin a cat. And then there's the question of whether or not to use RTV on them. You can. I've done it both ways. Typically, if my sealing surfaces are in good shape and they're not gouged, I opt to not use it just because it's, it's just cleaner and I don't make a mess. And I did not use it last time, and it lasted for 20 years. So in fact, these don't come factory with RTV on them. Some do, some don't, but these don't. And so I typically, as long as my surfaces are in good shape, I don't use it. All right, so that pretty well wraps up the engine portion until we're ready to try to start it. So we can get back on removing this knuckle to change out our bearings. So the way I had it set up before with these timbers, they were under the A-arms, and obviously I can't remove the knuckle if the whole machine is supported on the A-arms. So that was about to have us working on the floor on jack stands. But the older I get, the less tolerant I become. And I no longer tolerate working and crawling around on the blessed floor. So instead of doing that, I just simply reconfigured the timbers and we're back in business. Oh, these shocks have got a lot of miles on them. They've worn through the bushing, and it's just metal to metal. I haven't noticed them being loose or making a knocking sound, when you're going over terrain. But they're definitely getting there. I'm just gonna go ahead and take the shock off altogether just to get it out of the way. If they were a little bit tighter, I could just simply do that and they would stay up there, but the upper eye is hanging in there pretty good. The bottom one's usually the one that takes the most abuse. I don't know if it'll come across on that camera, but you'll see the weight rest right there, because it's like this, the weight right there, and it's getting a little worn. Let's just see what we can do here. There we go. Perfect. didn't realize it, but apparently my microphone stopped working. So I don't know how much of the previous segment you were able to hear. But we'll do what we can. Maybe if I were a professional content creator, I wouldn't have those problems. Now typically I would want to do this over in the press, but it's so much faster. The idea here, use a brass drift punch and catch that outside race so you're not smashing your bearing. And in this case, it seems to have worked out pretty good. Always wear safety glasses when you're handling snap rings. They can fly out of here and delete somebody like a bullet flying out of there. I don't know what got on my grease here, so trying to dig to the bottom to get the clean, the clean stuff. Fun fact, along with this being the original front differential with 16,000 miles on it, this is also the original front axle with the original boots. Now they're weather checked a little bit when you bend them, especially that one there. But yeah, these are original, 16,000 miles. This is the original upper ball joint, original A-arm bushings. And it's all still in pretty good shape. Even the ball joint feels pretty good. Now I do need, you can see the top of the ball right there moving. I'm pretty sure there's supposed to be a little piece of metal across that. So may not be long for this world, but it's original. I might take a grease needle and pump some grease into that while I'm at it. Now I did replace the lower ball joints 20 years ago. But anyway, the seal surface on the axle, it's pretty pitted up, as you could expect. I've conveniently covered it with grease to hide my shame. And again, these are the original shocks, and so far they've held up. So pretty impressive, this old Honda. So the upper ball joint tightened up with a wrench. A lot of times what you'll get into with ball joints is you go to tighten them, the joint just spins and you can't get the nut tight. In that case, you pretty much have to either get a pneumatic wrench on it or put it under a load, put the shock back on and lower the machine back down with a block of wood under it, get the weight of the machine on the ball joint, and then a lot of times you can go ahead and get it tightened. This time it went ahead and tightened, possibly because the whole top of the ball joint's exposed. It's probably got all kinds of crap in it, providing resistance, which for once helped me out. In fact, had I known that, I would have went ahead and ordered a ball joint too, because that's going to be the next thing to go. But I no longer have time. I've got a hunting trip coming up, and it will get through that portion of its use just fine. Now, the bottom one, it's spinning on me, so I'm going to try this pneumatic wrench first. You'll want to throw as much air at it as you've got. Just like that, tightens up, and I'll put a new cotter key in it. I don't like to reuse cotter keys, but I've done that many times. But in this case, I happen to have some new ones laying around, so we'll just go ahead and use them. All right, now we're ready to reinstall the brake plate and tie rod. I've already got the shock on there. I greased my non-existent shock bushings, and so all this is nice. I put a layer of grease over the top of that ball joint to try to hopefully repel water and mud and so forth on this upcoming ride. It may just be a fantasy. I mean, it could just attract dust and make it worse. I don't know. I also found there's no ring right here on this knuckle, and I don't have one. This one is still there. It is smashed flatter than a pancake. So I think the responsible thing to do is just pretend we didn't see that, and I'm going to slather some grease over that before I put the brake plate on. So you adjust the shoes through this hole in the drum, and I just like to get them up to where you got a little bit of drag on that drum. Now I take the adjusters, clean them up really good with a wire wheel, and put some anti-seize on them. That way down the road, you know, when they get nasty, you can still accomplish the adjustment. Now we can change out this master cylinder. We got some goop coming out of here. That's never a good sign. Well, there really wasn't any fluid left in it. What was in there has solidified. And of course we've got this torn boot, and this seal here is worn out, spring and everything. So I'd say it's cooked. What do you think? Now I'm going to start by bench bleeding the master cylinder. You can do this on the machine, but I like to do it on the bench, so just less risk of getting brake fluid all over the plastics. And I'm also going to be replacing these Phillips head screws that came with it for the cap with these Allen head screws that are stainless steel. I do that on all my machines. It's pretty much that simple. Now I kind of made a mess of it, but you can usually get by with just using your finger over the end of the hole. Then I'll take and thread a bolt in here just to hold that fluid. It's putting up good pressure, and that's what I'm really looking for. It'll make our job a little bit easier when we go to bleed the brakes. Now, if you're using an aftermarket master cylinder like I am, odds are it's going to be universal, which means it'll have a mirror mount, which we won't need, and a brake light switch, which we also won't need. And that's fine, but the shape of it is slightly different. So in my case, the line wasn't quite long enough to hook up with this back in its original position. So I had to move it that way a little bit, so I had enough room for my line to hook up to it. And that may cause some interference with my brush guard or hand guard. So we may have to work on adjusting this thing, but I think I can make it all pan out. Okay, after bleeding, I just did the final brake adjustment, and this is real simple. There's a wheel in there you turn with a flathead screwdriver. There's two of them. They're 180 degrees out from each other. You want to turn them both the exact same amount. So in this case, as I turn that wheel, I got about 3 turns with the screwdriver, And if you're in doubt as to which way to turn it, simply shine a light up in there. There's an arrow so you can turn it the right direction. So we did that, and I just adjust them up until there's just a little bit of, you hear that drag? I don't know if you can hear it or not, but I adjust them up till they're making contact. And of course, we've got a good firm handle. So I'm going to call the brakes completed. Now we're going to see if we can get this thing running. The first thing I'm going to do is get a hot battery in it. One of the drawbacks of having an Inspector Gadget four-wheeler is you're going to have a lot of wiring. That makes changing the battery out a little bit more tricky. You know, with a multi-mount winch, you're going to have two sets of winch cables. You're going to have the wires for your winch toggle. Then, of course, I've got auxiliary lighting and auxiliary 12-volt power port. So if you've ever replaced one of these batteries before, you're probably familiar with these lead nuts. One of the challenges, especially if you're running auxiliary wiring, is picking that nut up in the slot to make contact with the threads on the bolt. And so what I've done here is I've employed what's known as a cotter pin extractor. It's just a hook type tool. I slide it in underneath that nut to pick it up. That way when I thread that bolt in, it'll catch them threads. Just a little tip for you. While I'm under here, it'll be a good time to check the air cleaner, just to make sure no mice have made any nests up in there. It's pretty easy to get the lid off, but it's a harrowing task putting it back on with all these wires. And so, yeah, I was just looking at this old battery. Let's see, November 8th of 19. I put a battery in this the last season that I used it, so it's been out of commission a little bit longer than I recall. I think that's every bit of 5 years at this point. So it looks like our air box is free of any inhabitants. The filter looks good and clean. I run a K&N with an outerwear. The carburetor's jetted, of course, for the 475 big bore kit and the Super Trap exhaust. And speaking of carburetors, I'll be very surprised if we don't have to go through this carburetor, given the fact that it's sat up for 5 years and undoubtedly has ethanol fuel in it. I think that would be, if we don't have to do that, I'd say it's probably on par with what's known in the industry as a miracle. But of course, I said the same thing about that old Clark forklift over there. And if you've watched my other videos, you know how that went. So I'm very open to being pleasantly surprised. Now, I haven't fully put this thing back together yet because I want to make sure it runs first before I go putting the plastic and whatnot back on it, in the event that we have to get back into it. But up here, I've got it pretty well buttoned up, ready for the seat to go on. And for those of you from the first video that didn't believe me on how many miles is on this thing, let's just light it up here and take a look. See if I can get you focused there. I'm not sure, this little viewfinder is impossible to look through. But the odometer is 16,294 miles. And the hours, 1,874.3. So yeah, this thing, it has seen some miles. Now, when you're going to buy, let's say, a used four-wheeler, people who are selling used four-wheelers are a lot like women that you may be dating. They're seldom going to be completely honest with you about their past or how much wear and tear the machine has seen. Now, why is this important? This is important because past behavior is the best available indicator we have of future behavior. So in terms, you know, if the thing has had a rough past, odds are it's also going to grant you a rough future in terms of repairs and reliability. However, the good news is there are some key indicators to look for. Now, in the case of ATVs, I'm not going to give you dating advice, but in the ATV world, the first thing you want to look at is the seat, whether or not it still has the original cover, whether it's been replaced. If it is original, how much wear is on it. Another good place to look are the hand grips. In this case, mine have been replaced because the originals were thoroughly destroyed. Now, there's one area that a lot of people overlook, but it's super important because it tells you the whole story. It's going to be the left side foot peg. Now, the shifter side is what catches all the wear and tear. So in this case, All of the teeth on this foot peg are completely worn smooth. In fact, it's almost got a little U shape there from all the excessive wear. So unfortunately, yes, my four-wheeler has a high body count. That's why I had to do so much work to it all those years ago. So now let's get some oil in it and see if it runs. Breakfast of champions, gentlemen. Before I jump on it and just go absolutely nuts, I want to see what we're in for here. Well, the fuel's still liquid. I guess that's a good sign. It's got mostly a full tank. So if it had less fuel in it, what I would do is top it off with some fresh gas. And what I am gonna do, regardless, is I'm gonna open up the drain on the carburetor, and in an attempt to, you know, if there's any sediment in that carburetor, maybe we can wash some of that out. All right, I got it broke loose. Just gonna open it up here, and we should start seeing fuel run out somewhere. I know we're getting fuel. Go ahead and apply the choke. It doesn't seem to be stuck. Let's see what it does. Wow. Wow. That's amazing. 5 years. That engine's quiet as a mouse. That's amazing. That super trap sounds awesome. It's not too loud. I don't think I can adequately communicate to you how glad I am I don't have to go through that carburetor. You get that old nasty gas on you, you're wearing it to bed. I mean, there ain't no washing it off. So anyway, all I got left to do, I'm gonna sling the plastics back on it, toss the wheels on, and we'll take it for a rip. Front brakes work pretty darn good. I mean, considering the drums, they were kind of rough, so they'll need to seat in a little bit. Our tires are flat spotted from sitting up for 5 years, so I'm just doing this, but that'll work itself out. I still have engine braking, or I should say I have it again. I had lost that with that other sprag, but we seem to have regained that pretty good. I've got no clutch slipping in the higher range. It tells me my centrifugal clutch is grabbing pretty good. Got engine brake. Now I'm right in the middle of town, so it's not like I can do much for a test drive. After 5 years, the old Foreman is back in business. And it cleans up pretty good too. I just rinsed it off. And man, it feels good to have this thing going again. It was so handy. And I'll definitely enjoy using it for the rest of this hunting season, and that was the goal. So with that, I'm going to wrap this one up right here. If you enjoyed it, let me know in the comments. Give it a thumbs up, because there's a lot more I can still do to this thing, as well as many other machines that I have. So with that, I'm going to leave it with you. Thanks for hanging out. As always, I'll see you in the next one.